Thank you for joining in for today's reading of Tao Te Ching. And we are going to continue from where we left off in our last video, which was this red marked quote. I'm going to study from here, then we're going to finish the introduction part, and then we're going to end up in book one. We're going to do about an hour of reading today. So let me just set up the timer, start right away. When the uncarved block shatters, it becomes vessels. The sage makes use of these and becomes the lord over the officials. Now, vessel is a term used from early times to denote a specialist. In the Analects of Confucius, for instance, we find the saying, a gentleman is no vessel, meaning that the concern of the gentleman is the art of the government and not the knowledge of specialists. The nameless uncarved block is nameless because it has not shattered and become vessels. Hence, it is the symbol of the ruler. Though the uncarved block is small, no one in the world dare claim its allegiance. We may recall that no name is adequate on a description for the Tao, because a name is always the name of specific thing, and so will limit the function of the Tao. Similarly, the ruler, nameless because he is no specialist and only specialists can be named. It is in virtue of his knowledge of the Tao that the ruler is able to rule over his officials, who, being specialists, can only be entrusted with departmental duties. The obvious lesson the ruler can learn from the Tao is being nameless. It's self-efficacy in relation to the myriad creatures. It gives them life, yet claims no possession. It benefits them, yet exacts no gratitude. It is the steward, yet exercises no authority. The ruler must likewise be self-efficacious in his relation to the people. The sage benefits them, yet exacts no gratitude, accomplishes his task, yet lays claim to no merit. In fact, the best of all rulers is but a shadowy presence to his subjects. And when his task is accomplished and his work is done, the people all say, it happened to us naturally. In a connection with the subject of the art of government in the Lao Tzu is often charged with advocating the use of scheming methods, yin mu. This is obviously based on opening passages in the chapter. If you would have a thing shrink, you must first stretch it. If you would have a thing weaken, you must first strengthen it. If you would take from a thing, you must first give to it. The interpretation of this passage is certainly not open to question, but it is another matter whether this can be justifiably be extended to other passages, such as the sage puts his own person last and it comes first, treats it as extraneous to himself, and it is preserved. It is not because he is without thought of self that he is able to accomplish his private ends. And desiring to rule over the people, one must, in one's words, humble oneself before them, and desiring to lead the people, one must, in one person, follow behind them. These passages seem to support the charge only so long as we have preconceived notion that the Lao Tzu advocates the use of scheming methods. But if we approach them with an open mind, we begin to see that there need not be anything sinister in what is said, which is no more than this. Even if a ruler were to aim at realizing his own ends, he can only hope to succeed by pursuing the ends of the people. If he values his own person, he can only serve its best interest by treating it as an extraneous to himself. What is here said about the realization of the ruler's private ends is reminiscent of what is sometimes said about the pursuit of happiness. A man can achieve his own happiness only by pursuing the happiness of others, because It is only by forgetting about his own happiness that he can become happy. This has never been looked upon as a sinister theory. No more need be the theory in the Lao Tzu. It is not said in the passages quoted that the ruler should pursue his own ends at the expense of the people. This would indeed be a vicious view, but that is precisely what is said here, by implication, not to be possible, even if were to grant that this is desirable. In fact, true selfishness is a very rare thing, and when it is found in a man, it makes him eminently suitable to be a ruler. A truly selfish man is one who would not allow excessive indulgence in the good things in life to harm his body. Such a person is unlikely to take advantage of the people for the sake of gratifying his own desires, were he made ruler. Hence, it is said, he who values his body more than dominion over the empire can be entrusted with the empire. He who loves his body more than the dominion over the empire can be given the custody of the empire. So I'm going to read this again. He who values his body more than dominion over the empire can be entrusted with the empire. He who loves his body more than the dominion over the empire can be given the custody of the empire. Very beautiful and insightful quotes here. I think I'm just gonna mark it. This probably represented the view of the school of Yang Shu. In a conversation between Yang Shu, Xin Kuli, recorded in the Yang Shu chapter of Lao Tzu, Yang Shu is said to have remarked, "A man of old would not have given a hair even if he could have benefited the empire by doing so. But neither would he have accepted the empire were it to offer to him for his exclusive enjoyment." The second half of the statement is a fair representation of Yang Shu's position, but the first half is a distortion similar to the statement by Meniscus, Mencius that Yang Su chose egoism, and even if he could have benefited the empire by pulling out one hair, he would not have done so. It has been pointed out by Dr. A. C. Graham that the true position of Yang Shu was that even if he could have gained the empire by losing one hair, he would have refused to do so. This is surely right, and Yang Shu's ideal was truly selfish man who would neither harm himself to the least degree in order to gain the empire, nor use the empire for his own enjoyment, lest such indulgence should be detrimental to his body. Such a man, according to the Lao Tzu, is eminently suited to rule over the empire. As passages which seem to support the charge against Lao Tzu are capable of different interpretation, we are left with only section 79 as sole grounds for it. And this happens to be a passage which has close parallels with the Hanfi Su, the Chuan Kutses, and the Li Shi Shun Shu all attribute to works other than Lao Tzu. It seems reasonable to assume that it is a saying of considerable antiquity, which belonged to a tradition of somewhat different form that to which a greater part of Lao Tzu belongs. Sorry, guys, if I'm having some mispronunciations with the Chinese names, but I'm still learning. We'll get better. From what we have said about the Lao Tzu, it can be seen that the central idea is quite simple and has a direct bearing on life, high life, whether in its ethical or political aspect. We should model ourselves on the Tao, the supreme goal for the common man as well as for the ruler is survival. And the means to this goal is simply to hold fast to the submissive. No wonder it is said, "My words are very easy to understand, very easy to put into practice." If you can understand them, it is because straightforward words seem paradoxical. And when the worst student hears about the way, he laughs out loud. Wow. I really love how, you know, the teachings of the Tao are like so relatable and like so profound. When the worst student hears about the way he laughs out loud, that no one can be put into practice the advice contained in the verse is because it is against the grain of human nature in its degenerate form to act in accordance with it. There are certain ideas which we have so far not touched on in our account, and to these we must turn our attention. As the work is known as Tao Te Ching, it must seem strange that we have not said anything about the term Te. Te means virtue and seems to be related to its home phone meaning to get. In its Taoist usage, Te refers to the virtue of a thing, which is what it gets from the Tao. In other words, Te is the nature of a thing because it is in virtue of its Te that a thing is what it is. But in the Lao Tzu, the term is not particularly important one and is often used in its most conventional senses. There are two passages which seem to go against the general tenor of the work. The first is the passage in chapter 13, in which it is said, "The reason I have great trouble is that I have a body. When I no longer have a body, what trouble have I?" This is enlightenment indeed, but does not fit well with the Lao Tzu, where survival is assumed, without question, to be the supreme goal in life. The second is the passage in chapter 11. Does something and nothing produce each other? The difficult and the easy complement each other. The long and the short offset each other. The high and the low incline towards each other. Note and the sound harmonize with each other. Before and after follow each other. The point here is that opposite terms are related. Take away the high and there will no longer be the low. This line of thought, pushed to its logical conclusion, is capable of destroying the distinction between opposites. When the distinction between life and death is abolished, death is no longer something to be feared. This again goes against the general tendency in Lao Tzu, where not only survival is supreme value, but the distinction between opposites is basic. Take away this basis, and you render superfluous almost everything that is said in the book. Both these passages fit in much better with the kind of Taoist thought to be found in the most important parts of Zhuangzi, where the problem that is the main concern of Lao Tzu is solved by cutting the Gordian knot. There are certain ways of interpreting the thought of Lao Tzu which is very common, but do not seem to me to be well founded. Both in China and the West, there have been attempts to put undue emphasis on the mysteries elements in the Lao Tzu. So far, we have seen only a rather down to earth philosophy aimed at the mundane proposal of personal survival and political order. There are few passages which form the basis of this emphasis on the mysteries. There are two kinds. These are of two kinds. The first concerns the origin of the universe. The second concerns certain practices of the individual. In the first, we often find the term the mother of myriad creatures, but the term which lends itself most easily to such a purpose is the mysterious female, which occupies in chapter 6. The spirit of valley never dies. This is called the mysterious female. The gateway of the mysterious female is called the root of heaven and earth. Dimly visible, it seems as if it were there, yet use will never drain it. It is possible, however, I'm just going to take a quick screenshot of this. It is possible, however, to take this as a piece of cosmology. Just as living creatures are born from the womb of the mother, so is the universe born from the womb of the mysterious female. It is a remote possibility that the language used here is an echo of some primitive creation myth. But even if that it, that were the case, the language in the Lao Tzu has no longer any mythical significance. as can be seen from the description of the mysterious female as dimly visible and seemingly there. It is no more than a picturesque way of describing how the universe came to be and an expression of wonder at the inexhaustible nature of this creative process. The comparison of the creative process of nature with the union of male and female is not limited to this passage. Further examples are heaven and earth will unite and sweet dew will fall, and the myriad creatures carry on their backs the yin and embrace in their arms the yang, and arc the blending of the generative forces of two. It seems hardly justifiable to take such passage and interpret the whole work in the light of them. The second type of passage deals with the practices of the individual and has the newborn babe as a symbol. One who possesses virtue in abundance is comparable to a newborn baby. Again, if you are a ravine to the empire, then the constant virtue will not desert you, and you will again return to being a baby. What is it, we may ask, in a baby that makes it a suitable symbol for a state so desirable in the eyes of the Taoist? It is its suppleness. Its bones are weak, and its sinews supple, yet it holds its firm. Its bones are weak, and its sinews supple, yet its hold is firm. We have seen that Zhu, supple, pliant, submissive, is looked upon as the quality resembling most closely as that of Tao, and because of this, a man is supple and weak when living, but hard and stiff when dead. Grass and trees are pliant and fragile when living, but dried and shriveled when dead. Thus, the hard and the strong are the comrades of death, the supple and the weak are the comrades of life. It may be noted that I'm just going to mark this. This is such a beautiful passage. It may be noted in passing that the insight thus gained into the nature of things is an intuitive one. The Taoist sees that water is submissive and weak, yet it can wear down the hard set of things, that the baby is supple and weak, yet no one wishes to harm it, that the female is meek and submissive, yet she is able to get the better of the male, that the body is supple when alive and rigid when dead. And from these isolated observations, he gains the intuitive insight that in the nature of the universe, it is submissive that survives and triumphs in the end. Once this intuition is gained, further observation is unnecessary and serves only to confuse. Without stirring abroad, one can know the whole world. Without looking out of the window, one can see the way of heaven. The further one goes, the less one knows. About the newborn baby, there is one passage which seems to show a different point of view. In concentrating your breath, can you become as supple as a baby? It is possible that the concentrating of the breath implies some sort of breathing exercise or perhaps even yogic practice. But again, this is an isolated passage in the Lao Tzu, and what may be even of higher significance in this passage has parallels in the chapter 37 of Huang Tzu and chapter 23 of Zhang Tzu. In the latter work of the passage occurs in a story concerning Lao Tzu and is attributed by him to a book on the safeguarding of life, Wei Xing Shi Xing. It is therefore possible that the passage belongs so properly to a school which was given to practices thought to be conducive to the prolonging of life. In the Lao Tzu, the aim is rather to avoid an untimely death through the adoption of submissiveness as a principle of conduct than the prolonging of life beyond its natural limit by artificial practices, popular with the seekers after immortality. There is another common assumption that needs examination. Ever since Wang Pi, who wrote a commentary about the Book of Changes as well as on the Lao Tzu, there has been no lack of interpreters who found affinity between the two works. But it seems to me that this assumption is mistaken. Elsewhere, I have argued that the interpretation of the theory of change as cyclic is more appropriate to the Book of Changes than to Lao Tzu. Here, I wish to only call attention to the yin and yang, the central concepts of Book of Changes, and the basis of the process of cyclic change. In the Lao Tzu, the yin and the yang appear only once, in section 94, which has been quoted above. This is perhaps related to another passage. When carrying on your head your perplexed bodily soul, can you embrace in your arms the one and not let go? If this is so, then section 94 belong to the same group as section 24, which, as we have just seen, represents the school given to the practice conducive to prolonging of life, a tradition quite different from the main part of Lao Tzu. This may be a speculation, but the fact remains that the yin and the yang appear once and once only in the whole of Lao Tzu, and there is no reason to suppose that they occupy an important place in the thought of the whole work. As in our view of the Lao Tzu is an anthology, it is a matter of some interest and importance that we should try to identify in the views of some of the thinkers of the warring states, period whose works are unfortunately no longer extant. We have seen, for instance, that views similar to those of Yang Zhu can be found in passages where the ideal ruler is represented as truly a selfish man. We have also seen that in replacing the concept of heaven by that of the two, the Lao Tzu bears some resemblance to the part of Quan Tzu, which, in the opinion of some modern scholars, are the work of school of Sung King, Yin Wen, who figured among the scholars gathered in Shi Xia in the state of Shi. Again, according to the Li Shi Shun Shu Xian, the key concept in the teachings of legendary Kuan Yin, keeper of past, is the limpidity in the Tian Xia chapter of the Huang Tzu in the account of the thought of Kuan Yin and Lao Tzu. The former is quoted as saying, presumably in connection with the sage, there is nothing inflexible in him, and so things show themselves up clearly. In his moments, he is like water. In his stillness, he is like a mirror. In his response, he is like an echo, indistinct. He seems shadowy, silent. He seems limpid. He never leads, but always follows behind others. Here, besides limpidity, there are other concepts, many of which are like water, stillness, indistinct, shadowy, to follow and not to lead, are to be found in the Lao Tzu, as Kuan Yin is so closely associated with the story of the westward journey of Lao Tzu. It is not surprising that so many of the ideals attributed to Kuan Yin are to be found in the Lao Tzu. Liesu, whose a nebulous figure as Lao Tzu, was said to have advocated emptiness. Too, Li Shi Chun Xiu, and emptiness figures were very prominently in the Lao Tzu, although the term used except section 15 and 37 is Shun and not Hu. The most fascinating case is Shan Tao and Tian Pan, who is invariably mentioned with him, who is not figured at Xixia, but one suspects was at least as prominent in the Warring States period as Shuangzu or Lao Tzu as representative of what later was called the Taoist thought. He is said in the Tianxia chapter of Shuangzu to discard wisdom, to laugh at the empire for honoring men of worth, to consider wrong the great sages of the empire. He's quoted as saying, the highest thing we can hope to emulate is the insensate. Men of worth and sages serve no useful purpose, as their cloud never strays from the way. According to the Hugh Sun chapter 17, he was able to see the value of following behind, but not the value of taking the lead. It is somewhat surprising that all his views that we have mentioned are to be found somewhere in the Lao Tzu. His attack on wisdom, men of worth, and sages is identical with the opening lines of chapter 19. Exterminate the sage, discard the wise, and the people will benefit a hundredfold. And the opening words of chapter 3, not to honor men or wealth, will keep people from contention. The value of not taking the lead is also to be found in a number of passages, some of which we have already quoted in connection with the refutation of the charge of use of scheming methods. It is also found in chapters I have three treasures which I hold and cherish. The third is known and as not daring to take the lead in the empire. I'm just going to read this again. I have three treasures which I hold and cherish. The third is known as not daring to take the lead in the empire. Not daring to take the lead in the empire, one could afford to be lord over the vessels. Now, to forsake the rear for the lead is sure to end in death. Finally, Shantao's insensate plot is singularly like the uncarved block in the Lao Tzu, the symbol of freedom from desire. We have said enough to show that passages are to be found in the Lao Tzu which contain key concepts from various schools of warring state periods, but unfortunately we cannot take our investigations any further in this direction for two reasons. Firstly, we know far too little about most of these early schools, whose representative works are no longer extant. Secondly, from the key concepts associated with these schools, one gets impression that very often there is more difference between them in terminology than in substance. Does not valuing the submissive or weighing the empty or avoiding the lead amount to the same thing? May it not be die case that some of these schools were much alike, but each had to put up a different slogan in order to justify Dai claim to be an independent school. Since in the warring state spirit so much was to be gained by such a claim, if this is so, mere is perhaps much to say for looking upon all schools represented in the Lao Tzu as coming under general description of Taoism, as Dai historians of Dai Han certainly did. Whatever the truth of Dai matter, the the scanty material at our disposal, we cannot hope to sort out what pertains to the different schools. Though die little, we can do reinforces our conviction in the Lao Tzu is an anthology in which are to be found passages representing the views of various schools, including some of which flourished in Xia in the second half of the fourth and the first half of the third century BC, and which shared Dai general tendency in the thought that came to be known as Taoism. In Dai translation, Dai division into chapters in the traditional text has been adhered to, but section numbers have been introduced. They serve to separate existing chapters into parts which, in my view, need not originally have belonged together. This does not mean that in every case there could not, in fact, have formed a continuous whole. If the reader can see a connection between parts that I have separated, he can simply ignore my section markings. I have used this method in preference to rearrangement of the text, which has been attempted by Eastern as well as Western scholars. Because I am unable to share their assumptions in the present text is not in the proper order, and there is a proper order which can be restored by rearrangement, where two passages are possibly independent. I have given them section numbers, but when a passage is followed by another which serves as further exposition and was probably added by some editor, I have used the same section number but with an added letter after it. As considerably more than half of the text consists in the rhyming passages, which are probably of an earlier date, it seems desirable to separate them from the prose parts. This is done by printing the translation of the rhyming passages in separate lines and with indentation. Needless to say, no attempt has been made to translate these passages in verse form. The text I have followed is that of standard Wang P version, where I have departed from the standard text. I give the variant reader in a note. I have, however, not thought it is necessary to give detailed citation of my authority, as a reader who is interested in the matter can easily find this information in a number of excellent works in which variant readings have been collated. For instance, so the author has mentioned how he has read this book. Now,